Okay, everyone. So let us carry on where we left off yesterday. So we were looking at verse number 9 of the Migasālāsutta, and just to remind you, the verse goes as follows. It's the asceticism, which is tapo, and the spiritual life, insight into the Four Noble Truths, and the seeing for oneself of Nirvana. This is the greatest good fortune. And so yesterday we had a little bit of a look at the idea of asceticism, which is tapo. And usually the Buddha does not recommend that. He does, the idea of tormenting the body is considered an obstacle on the path. And this is exactly what the Buddha stayed away from when he's talking about the middle way. It's away from excessive torment of the body and also away from the indulgence. But I made the point yesterday that sometimes the Buddha redefines these terms a little bit, and he kind of makes tapo more of a kind of mental thing where you are patient, and he calls patience like the highest form of asceticism. So in that sense there is a kind of Buddhist asceticism, but generally speaking he does not recommend the idea of self-torment. So I'm going to have one more look at the sutta where it becomes more clear that he avoids the idea of self-torment, and he does not recommend that for anyone practicing the Buddhist path. Then I will have a quick look at what is meant by brahmacharya in the suttas and why brahmacharya is significant. This is what is still translated as the spiritual life. And then we will have a quick look at the Noble Truths, the Four Noble Truths. Usually that's a whole retreat in its own right, but it's always nice to be reminded of these truths and what they actually mean. And of course those Four Noble Truths, they include the seeing of Nibbana, so we will touch on that as well as we go through this. So just to recap from yesterday, so now we're going to have a look at this sutta, which is with Rāsiyasutta. And this is SN 42. 42 is the Gamani Samyutta. This is the Samyutta Nikaya chapter on headmen. In those days every village would have a head person, the headman. And so these are all the discourses or discussions the Buddha had with these village headmen. And I think one of these headmen, his name was Rāsiyasutta. And so this is a discussion he had with him. It's just a small extract from a much longer suttas. So this is what Rāsiyasutta says to the Buddha. I think it's Rāsiyasutta, I'm not entirely sure. I think that's what's going on here. So let's have a look at how this discussion happens. Okay, so this is what he says to the Buddha, Rāsiyasutta. Sir, I have heard this. The ascetic Gautama criticizes all forms of mortification. This is tapo. This is the idea of self-torment. This English word mortification is a kind of strange word, but it's mortifying. It literally means something like killing or something like that. So you're mortifying the flesh. You're trying to get rid of the flesh, the physical aspect of existence, so you can reach the mental side. That's kind of the idea behind mortifying and mortification. But it basically means torturing the body or tormenting the body. He categorically condemns and denounces those fervent mortifiers who live rough. Those tough mortifiers, those kind of are very committed to mortifying the flesh. Do those who say this repeat what the Buddha has said and not represent him with an untruth? Is their explanation in line with the teaching? Are there any legitimate grounds for rebuttal and criticism? This is kind of nice. You will notice here that when you hear some rumor about something, the Buddha says this, I've heard someone has told me, Niwern has told me that the Buddha says A. And then I go to the Buddha, I ask him, is Niwern right? Did you really say that? And this is kind of beautiful way of ensuring that you're not misrepresenting somebody. Yeah, you don't go around just making claims and random things from what you hear. If you hear that someone has said something, then you go to the original person and ask them, is it true? Because very often it turns out to be wrong. Yeah, we misunderstand, there are rumors going around, things are not really said or done appropriately. Did Ajahn Brahm really do that or did he not do that? Okay, better check with Ajahn Brahm. And then he will tell you whether he did it or not. So this is a very good habit to have, rather than believing in all kinds of rumors and all kinds of things spreading around. It's usually very dodgy and very unreliable, because human communication is so imperfect. It goes from one person to the second one, and go from the second one to the third one, and by the time they reaches the third one or the fourth one, it's got nothing to do with the original thing we were talking about. I'm sure you can recognize that. So he goes to the Buddha, and what do the Buddha reply? Of course, the Buddha replies, as you would expect, Chief, those who say this do not repeat what I have said. They misrepresent me with what is false, hollow, and untrue. And this turns out very often to be the case. So now let us find out what the Buddha actually says about self-torment. This is kind of a continuation from what we saw yesterday here. Now consider the pleasure seeker, this is I think the kama bhogi, who seeks wealth using legitimate non-coercive means, and who makes themselves happy and pleased, and shares it and makes merit, and they enjoy that wealth untied, uninfatuated, unattached, seeing the drawbacks and understanding the escape. This pleasure seeker may be praised on 4 grounds. What are the 4 grounds for praise? And so, again, this is the idea of the Vibhajavadin, the one who has a doctrine, who analyzes. You look at the positive in the situation, you look at the negative or the downside in the situation, and so you analyze in details what actually is happening. This is always the Buddha. It's not like it's either good or bad. There's some aspects that are good, and there are some aspects that are bad. So we need to be very nuanced in the Dhamma. It's not things are not easily decided on one way or the other very often. So they seek wealth using legitimate non-coercive means. This is the first ground for praise. You do your work in a good way. You do the job properly or whatever. And then of course you deserve a salary, and so this is how you get your wealth. That is legitimate. It is non-coercive. You don't kind of try to do shortcuts or do dodgy things, or you build a building which is going to fall down any time, and then people die in the building. This kind of happens when there is corruption involved. You're not a corrupt person, basically. And by being not non-corrupt, you are helping to uphold the world in a good way. Corrupt people drag us all down because they make life so much more dangerous. So you get praise for that. Praise for doing it, living in with the right kind of livelihood. They make themselves happy and pleased. This is the second ground for praise. Isn't that interesting? You make yourself happy, and that is a ground for praise. That's good news, isn't it? It means that whenever you use your wealth in a good way to, have a good life, actually that's fine. You should look after yourself. We shouldn't kind of not negate our own happiness. It's very important that we do look after ourselves. We come first because we are closest to ourselves. And so this is a ground for praise. It's very different from what you hear elsewhere sometimes. They share it and make merit. This is the third ground for praise. Not only do you make yourself happy, but you share it with others. And I don't know about you, but very often it's very delightful to be able to share something with others. You have a meal, oh, please come and have a meal. And you share that, and it kind of builds up something very positive. You feel really good about it, the other person feels good about it. You create community, you create harmony. So many positive things come out of that, and you feel far better as a consequence. We know that this is true. So you share it, and then you also make merit. You don't really think about the merit you make. It's just a positive consequence of this. And they enjoy that wealth, untied, uninfatuated, unattached, seeing the drawbacks, understanding the escape. This is the fourth ground for praise. In other words, this probably is referring to a stream enterer, because they are the ones who understand the drawbacks in these things. They are the ones who understand the escape. At the very least, it refers to someone who has samadhi, because when you have samadhi, you have gone beyond the attachment to the sensual world. That's the whole point of samadhi. And so you understand what lies beyond. You understand the escape. This is the fourth ground for praise. You do it, you enjoy these things, but not really attached to it. It's like one of those remarkable things that you see in the sutta sometimes is the person who gets into deep samadhi, and afterwards they come out and they have a meal and they enjoy the meal even more. It's one of those strange paradoxes that I kind of always find so interesting, that you enjoy sensuality more when you have given it up. Isn't that kind of interesting? Because what you have given up is the attachment. What you have given up is the idea that this is going to really cause you a lot of happiness. And because you're not attached, it means that there is no craving involved with that. And when there is no craving, you are present. Your mind is here. It's not kind of all over the place. And because you are firmly present, firmly mindful, you are able to enjoy what is happening to you much more. It's like meditation, when sometimes you feel your mind comes firmly into the present, you're really mindful, and it becomes very delightful when your meditation is like that. But when your meditation is all over the place and your mind is here and there, it's kind of dukkha, it's not very nice. And whenever you are mindful, mindfulness has a certain amount of happiness that always comes with it. Wow, it's so nice to be here. I can really relax now, really let go. The worries of the past and the future are gone. I'm just here with a good bunch of people doing good things. What a wonderful thing that is. And you can see how this not being attached, being uninfatuated in this way is a kind of non-suffering. You are letting go of all of that. And that then becomes the fourth ground for praise. So what, is there any non-praise here? Well, maybe the non-praise is that you are still too involved in seeking pleasure maybe in that world, perhaps a little bit. But basically there's not many drawbacks here anymore once you reach this ground. This pleasure seeker may be praised on these grounds. If you want to read the full sutta, you can, but I have only taken out the gist here that I wanted to focus on. So, what is not to be praised? And this is the second case that comes up now, when there's not to be praised. In this case, the third fervent mortifier. I can't remember what this is a mortifier. Now we're talking about the pleasure seeker. These are the two extremes. Now we come to the mortifier. We're going to the other extreme. So the third mortifier may be criticized on one ground and praised on two. So that's interesting. You're mortifying, you get a bit criticized, a bit praised. Again, the Buddha is a vibhajavadin, one who analyzes carefully. You don't just criticize, you look at what's really happening. So what is the one ground for criticism? The one ground is that they mortify and torment themselves. So remember that. Don't torment yourself. It's easy to say, and you may think it's obvious. Of course, I shouldn't torment myself, but this is so common in the Buddhist world. People go around saying, no pain, no gain. You got to sit long periods. Okay, it's painful. Sit longer. Just observe the pain. Oh, but observing is painful. Keep on going. Observe more. And actually, the Buddha recommended against this. Don't observe the pain. Okay, observe a little bit. But as soon as it kind of gets, you get obsessed with the pain, the mind can't let go of it anymore, it becomes very unpleasant and very difficult. Change your posture. Do something else. Don't go through these enormous amounts of pain. People will refer to the Satipatthana Sutta, and if you go to the Satipatthana Sutta, it says, the second Satipatthana is about contemplating feeling, and in there it says you contemplate unpleasant feeling, pleasant feeling, neutral feeling in the body, in the mind, and all of these kind of things. So look at there, it says contemplate unpleasant feeling. That's what I'm doing. That's why I kind of cause all this pain in the body. I can contemplate unpleasant feeling. But is that really what it means? And the answer is, it can mean that to a very limited extent. The problem is that you will not really be able to contemplate pain in that way, because pain is actually very hard to contemplate in that way, because it distorts the mind. It makes it very hard to have a clear mindfulness about it. And so the good news is that you can understand pain by understanding happiness. And this is what you find in the Anapanasati Sutta. You find there that you contemplate as you go through Anapanasati, and you get joy and happiness while you watch the breath, the absence of pain. That's how is the best way to understand pain. When it's absent, you know that it really is a problem. You understand the full extent of that pain. You understand that, actually you don't really need to, and this is one of those very profound understandings of insight. The best way to get insight into anything is through its absence. As long as it is there, you can't have full insight into it. When it's absent, only then can you really understand what it was. This is the famous simile of the tadpole and the water. Tadpole cannot understand water because it's always been in the water. It's always been around. Only when the tadpole becomes a frog and jumps out. Oh, now I understand water. Same thing with us. As long as you are immersed in painful feelings, you can't really understand them properly. But when you emerge from them and you understand some really profound happiness, then you can actually understand. So Satipatthana, Vedananupassana, the contemplation of feelings, happens more in this kind of way. So please don't waste too much time with painful feelings. I'm sure many of you here, you are already Ajahn Brahm disciples. Ajahn Brahm would never tell you to watch painful feelings. That's not the way he works. Ajahn Brahm is a happiness. No, I was going to say he's always been on the happiness side of things. I was going to say happiness junkie. That kind of doesn't sound nice. But Ajahn Brahm has always been into the happiness of meditation. And the Buddha himself says that the path of happiness is superior to the path of suffering. You find this in places like in the Anguttara Nikaya 4s. So enjoy your meditation. There's enough dukkha in life already. Anyone who hasn't got enough problems in life, okay, if you have, if you really haven't got enough problems, okay, then create dukkha for yourself. But it's very rare to find anyone who hasn't got enough problems already. So this is the one ground for criticism. Mortifying, torturing yourself. Now, what are the two grounds for praise? They achieve a skillful quality. So you are mortifying yourself, but you achieve a skillful quality. This refers back to something that was talked about before. They achieve some kind of positive outcome. And they realize a superhuman distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. So in other words, even though they have been torturing themselves, somehow they have been able to break through to a higher insight. So that obviously is a ground for praise. So there you are. So one ground for criticism and two grounds for praise. Ideally, we want to have the three grounds for praise. You enjoy and you achieve a good result, and you achieve the superhuman distinction. This is the Uttarimanusa Dhamma, the Alang Arya Nanadasana Visesa, is the Pali expression there. I don't really like this translation. It's a superhuman quality and a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble. There's two different things going on there. Anyway, it's good enough. So, second ground for praise. This fervent mortifier may be criticized on this one ground and praised on two. So, there you are. Enough about mortification, because it's not so interesting perhaps. So let's have a quick look at the idea of brahmacharya. So the word brahmacharya means the conduct of Brahma, and the conduct of Brahma is one who has gone beyond sensual pleasures and gone to the Brahma realm, someone who cultivates the four Brahma viharas, metta, karuna, mudita and upekkha. This is Brahma. And so the conduct of Brahma is the conduct of celibacy, or the conduct of abstaining from sexuality. That is what is the conduct of Brahma. So that's really what it means in the suttas. And so the monastic life is called the brahmacharya, because it is that kind of conduct. So what does that mean? Is it good to be celibate or is it bad? Well, let's find out what this sutta has to say. So this is from the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses, chapter 6, sutta 44, with Migasālā. And Migasālā was a female lay follower of the Buddha. And this is what she says to the Buddha. My father Purana was chaste, set apart, avoiding the vulgar act of sex. The common act of sex, I think, is a better translation. Vulgar can often have a very negative connotation, and it doesn't really have those negative connotations quite in the suttas. So more the common is better. When he passed away, the Buddha declared that since he was a once returner, he was reborn in the host of joyful gods. This joyful gods, not sure what that is. It's not the standard name for any God community, but we'll just accept that. So you are a once returner, and you get reborn in the joyful gods. That's what I was saying before. If you get reborn among the gods, you will meet many stream enterers, once returners there. Lots of aryas. More aryas among the gods than there is among the humans, because that's where the aryas normally go after they die. So one of the great benefits of being reborn in the Deva Loka. So he was abstaining from sexuality altogether, and then he was a once returner, and he was reborn among the joyful gods. And then there's this other fellow. But my uncle Isidatta was not chaste. He lived content with his wife. When he passed away, the Buddha declared that since he also was a once returner, he was reborn in the host of joyful gods. They were reborn in the same place. They were both once returners. One was chaste, one was not. So how come they were reborn in the same place? Maybe it's kind of a waste of time. Might as well be content with your partner. There's no point in kind of being too restrained. So what are we to make of this? What does the Buddha reply, or whoever is talking to this Migasālā lady? Let's see what the answer is. How on earth are we supposed to understand the teaching taught by the Buddha when the chaste and the unchaste are both reborn in exactly the same place in the next life? She's not happy with the Buddha. She's kind of upset. What is going on here? So what does the Buddha say? So the answer is as follows. If Isidatta had achieved Purana's level of ethical conduct, Sila, Purana would not have even known Isidatta's destination. In other words, if Isidatta had been chaste also, then he would have been reborn at an even higher level, beyond Purana's level. So Isidatta, he was held back by his lack of his sexual conduct, basically. He was held back by that. His sila was less than that of Purana. Here you can see the word sila being used about this sort of thing. So if you abstain from sexuality, it's a higher kind of sila. This is included in sila. So this is kind of very interesting. Your mind changes. You're giving up something that restrains and confines the mind, that makes the mind more narrow and small. And by giving that up, you are expanding the mind and allowing the mind more easy access to the Brahma Viharas and Samadhi and all of these kind of things. This is why this matters. You stop constraining the mind with these kind of thoughts and this kind of way of behavior. So Isidatta was not chaste. If he had been chaste, if he had given up sexuality, he would have gone an even higher rebirth, rather than the joyful gods. On the other hand, if Purana had achieved Isidatta's level of wisdom, Isidatta would not even have known Purana's destination. So the point here is that Isidatta was wiser than Purana, but his ethical conduct was less. So this is kind of the thing here. So the wisdom gives rise to a high rebirth, and the sila gives rise to a high rebirth. And if you had both of those, then you would have been even higher up, both of them. So that is why there is a distinction here. It is not just virtue, not just sila that determines your rebirth, it is also many other things. Your learning, your faith, your wisdom, your samadhi, all of these qualities will determine where you get reborn. Yeah, so this is what the Buddha is saying here. You cannot just judge by ethical conduct. Where you're going to be reborn. But the main point I wanted to show you this is to show you that even though sexuality is not considered bad in Buddhism, it's not a sin in Buddhism. This is not how Buddhism works compared to some other teachings. It is still considered a little bit problematic if you want to really go high in your meditation. At some point you have to give it up. That's really what this means. So it's part of sila in a broader sense of what sila is about. Okay, so that is that. So just a very brief idea there on the word brahmacharya and what that means. And Brahma conduct in India, there were a number of different brahmacharyas. Then the different brahmacharyas were basically different teachings. Different sects, different religions at that time. Each one was considered a brahmacharya. It was like a particular way of living the spiritual life and the religious life. And so one way of translating brahmacharya is as a spiritual path. It's just a spiritual path or a kind of spiritual life, if you like. And that is also a kind of nice translation. Okay, let's take a short break.
Ajahn, good morning.
Good morning.
Is there a difference between sharing of merit using thought and the transference of merits using water?
Is there any difference? It's the same thing, It's just that when you use the water, you kind of make it a bit more concrete, so it helps you to focus a little bit. So you kind of, because you're actually holding something, you have to make a very more clear intention because you're actually doing something. If you do it in your mind, it can be very fickle. You remember, then you forget, and then it's not as clear. So that's kind of the idea, to make it more substantive what you're doing. More effort. More effort is always powerful.
And when pouring the water, what should be in my thoughts?
The thought should just be, I share this with you, mum and dad, or whoever it is, with all my ancestors. I'm sharing the merit, what I'm doing now, with you. Please accept this merit, or something like that. Just let them know that you're sharing this with them. And if they are around, they will understand that.
Second question. Yesterday, in yesterday's Sutta class, you mentioned that only one being in the paper loka can receive merits. So I Google, paper loka refers to a hungry ghost realm. Then in the Q&A, I asked about the chicken that I cook and all that. So you're saying can share the merits with the chicken. So my question is, when we share merits, the animals can receive as well, or only the paper loka?
Only paper loka.
So only hungry ghosts can receive. A born human animal cannot receive.
Apparently not. No, that's my understanding. It's one of the suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya 10s. I think it's 177 or something. I call the Janusoni Sutta, where the Janusoni, a Brahmin, he asked the Buddha specifically, if I do this sharing merit, will they receive it? And Buddha said it depends on where they are reborn. And where do they have to be? They have to be reborn in Petaloka. Then they can receive the merit. And I think one of the reasons for that is Petaloka is very closely related to the human realm. So, for example, very often you have someone who dies and they are still connected to that old house they died in because they have attachments to that house. And so they're very close to us. And so they will be able to see what we are doing and be able to kind of relate to us. But if you get reborn as an animal, you lose that connection. An animal doesn't see you in the same way. An animal might be reborn, except if the animal is reborn in your family, but even then they won't really understand what is going on. But the Peta will be able to understand, and that's the difference. And so, Good.
Ajahn?
Yeah, please.
I think the human being can receive. If not, all of a sudden, they strike lottery.
The lottery?
Then the Toto
Yeah.
lottery,
Total lottery.
1,001 people never strike. How can he receive?
Okay, well, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, so... okay, we will... yeah. Okay. Anyone else want to say anything? Yeah.
Ajahn, I think yesterday you mentioned that one of the factors that was abandoned as you become a Sotapanna is Silabhata Paramasa, and Ajah's translation is one does not grasp the Sila and the rituals. But then you look at Bhante Sujato's translation, he translated it as misapprehension instead of grasping.
Mistake, misapprehension, exactly.
So, which one is correct?
Mine is correct.
Okay. But I also heard that Bhante Dhammapala also has this interpretation that concurs with Bhante Sujato in the sense that he brought up the Bhante Dhammapala is my acharya. Just a clarification. He brought up the practice where, like, for example, the cow sila and the dog sila that was observed during the Buddha's time, and he brought up that point that says that certain rituals or sila, when you grasp, you misunderstand it and then you practice it, then you may lead to some bad results. And for Sotapanna, there's no such misapprehension. So I'm not sure how do you see that.
Well, obviously, if you do the what is sometimes called the cow duty ascetic or dog duty ascetic, you practice like a dog or a cow, then it means that you are, if you do that, you are grasping onto it. That's kind of by definition, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. You're grasping onto that as leading to some kind of good destination. But if you become a Sotapanna, you would never do those dog duty ascetic things because you're not, don't grasp those things anymore. You've given up that idea, and so you just don't do it. And so there, grasping means doing it. Doing it and grasping it is the same thing. They're not really different. And so the Sotapanna is not just that it doesn't misapprehend it. He doesn't. In that case, it is a kind of misapprehension, but it's also just a non-grasping. It's the same, basically the same thing. It amounts to the same thing. You have to grasp those things for those things to actually be meaningful for you. But in general, the point about the Sotapanna is that sila, the virtues, they are aparamatta. You have to kind of look at the meaning of these words, and they don't mean misapprehension. They actually mean grasping. Paramasa means holding on. It doesn't mean some kind of wrong holding on. It means that just the actual holding on. And you can see that in certain suttas, in certain usage of this word. Second Sangha Disesa offense for bhikkhus is Yopana bhikkhu uttin vipanatena chetena matugamang matugamena sadin kai sangang samapajaya hatgang vedingangva anyatrasava. No, I got that. I got it wrong, but I can't remember now clearly. It's too difficult to chant the Patimokkha right here. But the word paramasa is used there, and the idea is paramasa means grasping, holding on to something. It's very clear. The context is very clear. And so you have to assume that the word has its ordinary meaning and not kind of add something. And the ordinary meaning is basically that once you become a stream mentor, as you find elsewhere in the suttas, you are perfect in sila. This is kind of what you find in the Anguttara Nikaya in a number of places. And so because you are perfected, because it comes naturally to you, you don't have to grasp it anymore. You don't have to hold on. It's not a misapprehension of this thing. It's actually no longer an apprehension. It is a natural consequence of your conduct. And so I just don't think that there is any basis in the Pali for calling it misapprehension. It just isn't there. It just means not apprehended. Aparamatta is the opposite of paramasa. It means not held on, not grasped. And so I can't understand the justification for that translation, to be honest. I'm not sure, am I making any sense at all? Or
I'm not an expert to make the call. I think maybe Bante can talk to Bante Sujato.
Yeah.
Hello, Ajahn.
Is that Jennifer? Yeah, hi Jennifer. Yeah.
How important is it for me to know whether I'm a Sotapanna? Then the next question is, I also hear things around that this teacher or this venerable has graded this person as a Sotapanna. So everybody rush towards that person.
Okay.
Is it that important?
Is it that important? If you have any doubts whether you're a Sotapanna, you're not a Sotapanna. So if you think maybe I'm not, guaranteed you're not. If you think you are, still maybe you're not. And that's the problem, right? So there's a tendency to overestimation, and this is one of the reasons why if you think that I think I'm a Sotapanna, it's actually always good to check it with someone who has a bit more insight and understanding, and to find out whether that might be true or not, because very often we overestimate, and if you overestimate, it becomes a blockage on the path. You can't really move forward anymore. This is kind of part of the problem, because if you think you've attained something, well, there's no need to try to attain it, right? So it becomes a blockage. As regards to other people, I mean the point of whether someone is a Sotapanna or not is, of course, whether they understand the Dhamma. Yeah, so it does matter a little bit. Because someone who is not a Sotapanna is liable to misunderstand the Dhamma and to kind of lead you astray and lead you in the wrong place. And so, if everyone goes around thinking, oh, this one is a Sotapanna, this one is an Arahant, but then they teach you the wrong thing, then it's a problem. And this is one of the main reasons why I always like to come back to the suttas, because that kind of bypasses that problem, at least partially. It is still a problem because we have to interpret the suttas, and interpretation is always difficult. But that kind of bypasses that. So what I would say is just watch out for yourself. If someone else says, oh, this is a Sotapanna, or this says that, don't worry too much about what other people say. You observe for yourself. You all have the ability to enough wisdom to be able to understand what are the qualities of someone who is supposed to be a Sotapanna. They should be nice, they should be kind, they should have all of these kind of positive qualities. And if not, okay, then you can kind of say, okay, it doesn't look like it to me. You don't have to dismiss it outright, but it seems unlikely to me, and then you just leave it aside. So trust your own judgment. Sometimes it can be very hard to know whether someone is a Sotapanna. It's easier if they're an Arahant, because then their conduct is 100% pure. And so it's easier to judge Arahantship than stream entry. But generally speaking, trust your own judgment. And what other people say, well, let that be their problem. Yeah, you don't have to. Maybe just go and check them out. Yeah, it might be interesting if they have a good reputation. But in the end, trust your own judgment. Yeah.